Hello everyone, and welcome back to ShieldScuff. Today, we'll be jumping back into Horizon Zero Dawn and looking at Aloy's journey after taking down the Sawtooth solo, up until the end of the Proving. Of course, our focus will be on the, strange things that happen in the world, whether it be out of bounds or off camera. Yeesh, creepy. So, join me on Quest for Oddities as Aloy makes her way to Mother's Heart and the Proving, and I hope you enjoy. Our little adventure continues after Aloy successfully hunts down a Sawtooth and learns a valuable lesson from Rost. He tells her, "The strength to stand alone, Aloy, is the strength to make a stand, to serve a purpose greater than yourself. That is the lesson you must learn." This is monumentally important to Aloy's character development, and comically important for the first scene we'll be breaking the camera away for, since Rost will be walking off alone. Here, Rost tells Aloy he will go somewhere she cannot follow. Altering our point of view reveals that Rost simply walks off into the sky after making this statement. A sad, heartfelt scene on camera, yet comic relief when it's off. As a fun little aside, during the time leading up to this scene, Aloy and Rost had another conversation that featured some strange effects off camera, namely that the physics-influenced objects on their character models were glitching out. Aloy's clothing was whipping around all over the place, and Rost's beard flickered in and out of existence. There are some more physics antics later on, but this one was a fairly funny encounter. As we press on, Aloy finds herself at the gates of Mother's Heart, the home of the Nora tribe. Aloy is stopped at the large wooden gates by a rather unpleasant guard who does not want to allow her inside. But what's going on behind those doors before the game decides to open them for us? Well, if we move the camera and clip through the gates before Matriarch Teersa orders them opened, we'll find something that would likely give Aloy pause and make her reconsider her decision to come here. Behind these doors, the game has, for some reason or another, spawned two random children on the same space. Definitely a creepy sight, and one that changes each time you trigger this scene. This would never be in our line of sight during this scene, and as such, their point of origin really wouldn't matter. They can spawn in and simply wander around to make the village appear more lively. Also interesting is the scene that plays out once Matriarch Teersa makes the guard open the gates for Aloy. Typically, we see the two briefly chatting as they make their way from the gate into the village proper. However, if we break the camera, we can see Teersa leading Aloy on a walk into the ground itself. I'd make an Avatar joke about earthbending or there being no war in Ba Sing Se, but, well, actually the latter meme fits quite well given what happens later in Mother's Heart, so let's go with that. After Teersa departs, we have a moment to take in our surroundings. I wanted to see what was inside the buildings around Mother's Heart, so I took the camera on a spin through a few of them. All of them are completely empty inside, lacking any furnishings or other comforts of home. Not that any of that is needed, of course, as we'd never see the insides of these places without a little assistance. Moving on toward both the next curious scene and the Proving, we find that there is another tribe, the Karja, visiting Mother's Heart in order to witness said event. The Nora are at odds with the Karja due to a history of violence on their part, so it's no wonder that the crowd that has gathered in the village wants nothing to do with the visiting priest. I really wanted to see what was happening off camera during this scene, mainly because of just how many characters are present. The funny thing is though, when we break the camera away, we find out that a great number of them are clones. This absolutely makes sense from a developer standpoint, since it would be wasteful to create tons of unique people that wouldn't get any real screen time. This holds true for this scene, as initially half of these characters are throwing fruit at the priest. These models are visible during the main scene and are likely swapped out for their counterparts between shots. It's also possible that specific models only have visibility on certain cameras. This isn't the only interesting thing that happens during this scene though. When Aaron speaks up to get the crowd to stop throwing their food at the Karja priest, we can see the crowd change once again depending on where the camera is looking while he talks. At any given time, half of the crowd is fully rendered, while the other half become low-res stand-ins. Now, things like this happen a lot in games. We're not supposed to be seeing this, obviously, and it's likely it's just implemented to save on processing power, but it's still fun to look at. While we're on this topic, after the day's events, Aloy heads to a Nora bunkhouse to stay the night. Normally, she gets in a brief altercation with the guard outside before heading in to listen to Bast endlessly recount the story of how he threw a rock at her when they were kids, leaving out the bit where she one-upped him, of course. However, if we take a look inside of the bunkhouse while Aloy is arguing with the guard outside, we can see that Bast hasn't loaded in yet, and there seems to be one of those creepy low-res character models present, staring with their eyeless face. Creepy. After Aloy rests at the bunkhouse for the night, the proving is upon her. Earlier I said there would be some more physics weirdness, and here we are. When the game is loading a new area in, there was a moment where the characters are simply sitting in their spawn point in a T-pose, or in this case, Y-pose, and their physics-related details haven't completely loaded in yet. Aloy's braids are one such object, so if you've ever wondered how our leading lady would look with shorter hair, here she is. Here she is indeed, as we have officially arrived at the proving. The event she has dedicated years of her life towards training for. Leaving our brave hopefuls frozen for a moment to survey the scene, we can see that the machines these Nora need to pry an offering from are also present from the start. Aloy, having everything to prove, takes a dangerous path to overtake the other competitors after Bast does something underhanded. Go figure, right? Unfortunately, she can't catch a break as we head towards the final part of Chapter 2 of our journey through Horizon Zero Dawn. Despite her victory, there is no time for celebration as the newly appointed Nora Braves are attacked upon the completion of the proving. War, it would seem, has arrived. During this scene, while Aloy prepares to defend herself, one of the attackers walks off camera to collect some heavy artillery, and I was curious to see just where he was going. Well, unsurprisingly, he vanishes, but he makes up for it on his return, swooping in like some sort of supervillain, hauling his massive gun as if it were weightless. Also of note are his subordinates, whose bows vanish while the scene is playing out while off of the normal camera. Without their weapons in hand, this looks more like a coordinated dance routine in the snow than an act of aggression. Despite that silly sight when viewing the scene from a different angle, this entire event is horrible and filled with unfortunate casualties, not the least of which is Rost, who sacrifices himself to save Aloy from the terror of the sun. While these two warriors clash, Aloy can be seen strangely floating above where she was left, as if she is resting on a cloud. I did want to see if there was anything special that happened with Rost after he pushed Aloy away to safety and disappeared in the explosion, but from what we can see when moving the camera around, he simply vanishes in the blast, never to be seen again. A bit of a depressing note to leave off on, but that does bring us to the end of the proving as well as the end of this video. What did you think of these peeks, both off camera and behind closed doors? Let me know in the comments below, and if you enjoyed it, leave us a like and subscribe for more incoming content. There's more Horizon on the way, so please stay tuned. Until next time, friends, peace.